Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Don't Worry Darling, which is a new movie from Olivia Wilde, starring Florence Pugh, Harry Styles, Chris Pine, Gemma and just a bunch of wonderful people behind and in front of the camera. And this is a movie that I was actually really anticipating because I love Olivia Wilde's first feature, Booksmart, and I love all the talent involved in front of the camera as well. Of course, Florence Pugh is brilliant in almost everything that she is in, and I was very excited to see what this movie is going to be about. But then all the controversies happened around this movie and all the critical reception happened from the film festivals, and it kind of tempered my expectations a little bit. But I am happy to say that I did really enjoy this movie, and I don't really understand why this movie is getting as strong hate that it is getting, because I think this movie is a very well made, although flawed film that was just a very fun experience to watch in theaters. Now, this will be a spoiler review, so if you've not seen this movie, I definitely recommend you go see it to kind of form your own opinion of it, because there's a lot of interesting things in this film that I do want to talk about with full spoilers. And if you don't care about spoilers, welcome, let's talk about this thing. So what is this movie about? Well, on the surface, it's exactly what it seems like from the trailers. You have, Florence Pugh's character living in the 1950s. She is a housewife married to Harry Styles' character that is living in this utopia called Victory, and she thinks that her life is all perfect. Her husband is very loving. He goes out to his job every day along with all the other husbands in this town, and she hangs out with all the wives. She goes to different events throughout the entire place, and she just thinks everything is all perfect. But of course, when everything is so perfect, things are not actually what they seem to be. And so let's talk about performances. And I think of all the things in this movie, the movie has surprises and twists and turns, some much more surprising than others and some not surprising at all. But I think the least surprising thing about this movie is that Florence Pugh is incredible in this film. She's such a great actress, like I said, in Midsummer, and the first movie I saw her in was Fighting With My Family, and just everything I've seen her in, she is brilliant as an actress, and she is no different in this film. She is wonderful. Watching her struggle throughout this movie, her desperation of trying to figure out what in the world is going on is infectious. You also want to know what is going on. I think that also does kind of hurt the film because the film isn't as unpredictable as you think it might be when it comes to the ending and the themes and what it's trying to say. But I don't really care too much because I think there's such a driving force in this film that is so entertaining to watch that I'm just so drawn to her character. And I think her character is done really well when it comes to the themes of this movie. And although those themes of, the patriarchy and how men, try to get power over women and all these different type of social situations, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's not saying anything that we haven't heard before in a film, but the movie is still trying to say some things. And that's a lot more than a lot of other films try to do. Some other films don't have any attempt to do these sort of things. And I see some people saying that this is Olivia Wilde doing her own version of Get Out, and I can see that being true. But when you have other Get Out ripoffs like The Invitation, for instance, this movie is so much better than that. It has so much more to do, and the performances are so much better, and just the overall direction from Olivia Wilde, you can tell that there's some intention and there's some real drive and passion behind this film, behind the camera and in front of the camera. And besides Florence Pugh is, of course, Harry Styles, who I think has great chemistry with Florence Pugh, and I really actually liked him in this film. And I see a lot of people saying that he's a bad actor, but I think a lot of people saying that haven't seen the movie yet because he's pretty damn good in this thing. And in terms of all the characters in this film, I think he has a lot to do that's kind of more subtle and in the background, because of course when you have the ending and have all the reveals that happens with his character, I feel like on second watch, when you watch his character in particular, you're going to find more things about his performance that seem a lot more intentional than you might think on the first watch. So like I said, spoilers, let's just get into Harry Styles' character and what he was doing with Florence Pugh throughout this entire movie. So you find out towards the end of this movie that it is a very Black Mirror type situation. So again, with the predictability, I knew it's going to be some sort of thing where the men have created this perfect utopia for themselves, and the wives of this movie are kind of trapped here, and they're trying to be able to get out of this place because they're not living the lives that they want to live. They're only living for these men, and that's essentially what it is. It's Harry Styles' character, was living his life, in the real world in modern day, and he thinks that his wife is not happy in her real life as this doctor because she's always working, she's always stressed, she's always doing all these things, but he's not really caring as to what she actually thinks of all these things because she likes her job, she likes her life, but to have that all taken away from her, it's not her choice. It's not, something where she's choosing to go into this world that seems so great. It's his fantasy, it's his world, and it's all of his ideas of what he wants her to be, and that's what he essentially imposes upon her. But I think what's interesting about his character is that he does feel guilt for what he has done, because when you see him in Victory and you see him in this world and you see, him struggling, him trying to talk to Florence Pugh and trying to figure out what is going on in this situation when she's so desperate of all these things, you can see that he does feel some guilt in the situation. I think that just adds another layer for his character that I think could have easily been thrown out the window, because with Chris Pine's character, that's essentially what he is. He's the one who created this world. He's the person who has all the funding to be able to make this reality a thing. And so he is more of the nefarious villain who is just really bad the entire time. But with Harry Styles' character, you can tell that he has some guilt over the terrible things that he's done throughout his life. And as much as I love Florence Pugh and Harry Styles in this movie and how much it focuses on them, I kind of wish this movie just wasn't just a showcase for Florence Pugh and would just kind of spread the love with all the other, cast members in the cast, because a lot of these side characters have interesting ideas and interesting stories with them that is never fully fleshed out, that you never really get to know. For instance, Olivia Wilde's character has a revelation towards the end of the movie where she's one of the wives that actually chose to be in this situation. She wanted to have this life because she lost her kids in the real world, and being in this fantasy, being in this world of victory is the only place where she can have her kids again. And although the kids in this reality from Florence Pugh's perspective isn't real, they aren't real people anymore. They're not really your children. They're just all fantasies. They're in your head. But it doesn't matter to Olivia Wilde's character. And she has this, revelation at the end of the movie where she admits that to Florence Pugh, that she knew the entire time that they were in this, simulation essentially, but she doesn't care about that. And I love that idea that they introduced for her character in this movie. And maybe on rewatch, you can see why she's saying the things that she does throughout the movie. But you just find out about that, and then instantly right after that, she's trying to help Florence Pugh escape, and there was no build to that. It felt like it just kind of was introduced at the end of the movie, mattered for about 5 minutes, and then was just thrown out the window again, because you never get to see some of these other wives outside in their real lives. And if you've seen Barbarian, I honestly wish more movies did what Barbarian does in its film, which is introduce a nice story for the first 40 minutes and then cut to black and then just kind of cut to a whole new thing and just kind of introduce new characters and show their world instead. And I kind of wish this movie did that, because the revelations and twists at the end of the movie, like I said, was predictable for me of, this whole world being created by the men in this town. I wish that reveal was pushed a little bit earlier in the film, and then maybe you cut to black and then you show other people's perspectives of why they're there, including Olivia Wilde's character or some of the wives like Kiki Layne's character. I kind of wish we got to see, exactly what we saw in this movie, where you see Florence Pugh's character investigating what Kiki Layne is saying, but then all of a sudden you cut to black, she figures what's happening, and then you flash back all the way to Kiki Layne's experience, or you talk about Olivia Wilde's experience, and you just have it be more of an ensemble piece where you figure out all the puzzle pieces to create the entire picture instead of just only focusing on one perspective. And I think that would have helped the pacing of this movie as well, because I think the first act sets up a lot of intrigue with Kiki Layne's character and Florence Pugh trying to figure out what is going on in the world, but the entire second act feels very repetitive in terms of it's still Florence Pugh trying to figure out what's going on, and there's not enough revelations in it to really push the story forward. It just seems like she's stuck in the same spot, because as a character she's not progressing in her investigation because everybody around her is trying to stop her from learning anything. So us as an audience, since we're in her perspective, we're also not learning anything. So the second act of the movie feels like you're kind of stuck in the same place, but then once the revelations happen and the last 30 minutes of the movie happens, the movie kicks into high gear, and it's so enthralling. I loved the last 30 minutes of this movie when she figures out what's happening, the whole car chase scene of her trying to get to that mountain and everybody chasing after her. It is so engaging. I think that when it comes to those aspects of the film, Olivia Wilde did an incredible job directing this movie, because I was so invested when it came to the ending of this film. I was so on the edge of my seat. I just wish we got to see that a little bit sooner, and maybe even an expansion of that, seeing the implications of what it means for her in the outside world after all these events. But in terms of the story, I really did like the world that they created. If this were a Black Mirror episode, I'd be so happy with the talents that they got involved in this movie, and maybe if it were a Black Mirror episode, it would be condensed in time so the second act wouldn't feel as long as it did. And honestly, this would probably be like a mid to high tier entry in the Black Mirror series. So in that way, I'm very happy with how this movie played out. I was very entertained. The only question I had was the plane. Because, Florence Pugh sees a plane flying in the air and it crashes, and that's what lures her to go over to that mountain to be able to try to escape victory. But then, she gets dragged back in by Harry Styles' character on the outside world, and we figure out how that all happened. But why did she see the plane in the first place? And I know Kiki Layne had her kid, and she's walking in the desert, and then, she came back, but the kid never did, and the kid had a plane. So maybe it's, their subconsciouses are creating, the children in this world, and maybe that plane has... I honestly don't know. What are your thoughts on the plane of this movie? Because I still can't figure it out. What was the deal with the plane? So that is my review of Don't Worry Darling. Have you guys seen it? What did you guys think? Comment down below. And of course, I'm open to hearing all your guys' extreme opinions about this movie, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of anger about this thing, but I don't think this movie warrants all that hate that it's getting, because I thought it was a very enjoyable time. So thanks everybody for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because I have a lot more reviews just like this one. So thanks everybody for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next one.